Good afternoon, everybody. What I am about to say to you has changed dramatically because of the events of early this morning. I am quite happy about the prospect of dying. For many years, I have wanted to see the Lord face to face. Those words were spoken to me yesterday morning when I was dressed in my spacesuit in Leicester Royal Infirmary by Reverend Robin. And early this morning, he died. That is a huge sadness for all of us. He rang me yesterday morning at 7:30 when I was in Derby, and he said, he was gasping, he said, "I'm dying." He had contracted COVID-19, even though he had been vaccinated 3 weeks ago. But his health issues over the last few months in particular meant that he was highly susceptible to something like that happening. And those months have been truly awful by anybody's standards. He had to be on his own. He couldn't see anybody, not even his own family. We couldn't take him communion. We couldn't support him. He had a form of leukemia, and he told me that last year that he had got this and that it meant he wasn't going to live for a huge time longer. There were sessions of chemotherapy, blood transfusions, in and out of hospital. It has been a tortuous time. And so yesterday when he rang me, I asked the priest from Holy Cross to go to see him, and I thought, no, I'm just going to go. So I went down there, and they were very kind, and they put you in a spacesuit, literally. And I went in, and we had an hour and a half together, and it was very special. Robin, being Robin, said to me, "I'm delighted to see you." And I said, "I'm delighted to see you too." And he said those words to me. I am very happy about the prospect of dying. For many years I have wanted to see the Lord face to face. This is not pious twaddle. It's the words of a man who knows he is very near the end of his life. And we spoke together about things, and Robin, being Robin, asked about you. "How are they all in the parishes?" he said. "Is everybody all right?" I helped him to have what would turn out to be his last meal, fish mornay. It was a struggle for him. He took his mask off and he had about a third of it, and that was sufficient. At that time, his condition wasn't as bad as it had appeared to be earlier in the morning. And so we spoke together, reminisced a bit, and I thanked him for being such a good friend. And I apologised to him. I said, "Robin, I'm sure I must have hurt you at some stage over the years, and I'm really sorry." And he did the same to me, which of course wasn't necessary. I said, "You never hurt me once." And that's how we left things. I was sure when I left him yesterday that I would see him again, because even though it was a struggle, it wasn't as it had been. But we realise now that once COVID-19 gets hold of you, especially latterly with this other strain, for many people, it can mean that the end of their lives is quite quick. And a similar thing happened to a very nice lady from O'Shilton Parish, Mrs. Teresa Starbuck, who was one of our catechists, very lovely, much-loved lady who contracted it last Wednesday and also died yesterday. I saw her on Sunday evening in Glenfield, and it was a very sad thing to see. She was trying to talk, but I couldn't hear her over the machinery. And being in these COVID wards is an experience that is just amazing. It is truly awful. I know that we've been a bit blasé about all of this, that, oh, well, Prime Minister says we can do this, we can do that. But we forget about the people who've actually been through this and suffered. And I remember, as it happened on Sunday evening, the nurse that was looking after Teresa is one of my daughters. I've told you before, but I have 5 Indian daughters who I truly love. I took them on 20 years ago when they first came here with nobody, and they're all highly qualified nurses. And my daughter Simi was there, who's been on the Jumbulance with some of you, so you know her, been here to Mass a few times. She's a wonderful person. And I was asking her how it's been. And I asked a nurse yesterday morning who I'd never met before, how are you? And they all used the same word, struggling. Struggling. It's such a pain for them. And of course, when you are in pain like this, I believe that it's the real deal. When people can detach themselves so completely that they can't function properly, they are not truly compassionate or empathetic at all. But when you care about people whom you're looking after and you cry over them, that's the real deal. I was talking to Simi and friends about a man called Anthony Gerslick, who died from COVID a while back. I saw his obituary in the paper. And Anthony Gerslick was in fact Professor Gerslick. And he was one of the men who helped to pioneer that treatment of putting stents in people's hearts through their wrists. When I was poorly in Glenfield there about 6-7 years ago, when I arrived back from Italy, he was the man who was looking after me. And they told me, when we were 35, that they looked after him before he died, and he was frightened. And I felt very sorry about that he was frightened. Why would a man who'd done so much for so many people be frightened? But the means of dying from COVID-19 is distinctly unpleasant, as we have been told, but may be chosen to ignore. And Robin, I said to him, "Are you at peace?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And told me that Sellers had got his funeral plan, which I knew anyway, and we had a smile about it. But he was at peace. Over the weekend, we will think about Robin's legacy to us, what he's meant to us. But he was a man of deep faith in his living and in his dying. We were both at the same school, at the Beckett School in Nottingham. He was quite senior to me, and Father John Hadley as well at the same time. And the Beckett School at that point was the only Catholic grammar school in the diocese. And it was run by an order of priests called the Augustinians of the Assumption, some of whom were quite fearsome. And I'll tell you this, you won't believe me, but it was a very peculiar time. In the time that I was there must have been 11 priests coming and going, and 8 of them left the priesthood. That's in the 1960s, if you please. Some of it was over Humanae Vitae, some of them wanted to get married, some had other reasons. So it's a little bit dispiriting. It was a bit dispiriting, and if anything, it taught you not to love your faith, but to doubt your faith, and even to be somewhat cynical in regard to one's faith. So how Father John and Robin and I survived is quite miraculous. And we survived largely because of the faith of our lay teachers, actually. Some of them were wonderful men of deep faith and commitment, and they communicated that to us. And that was the thing that, in many ways, that saved us during that period of the time. But Robin, as I say, he and I and John were at the same school. In those days, of course, you didn't speak to each other. That was boys' grammar school, and people in the fifth form didn't speak to people in the first year. And it was only when I got to the sixth form myself that I decided I was going to talk to people lower down and treat them as equals. And apparently that was rather new, but that was how it was. And we all called each other by our surnames, which is, again, not a great thing. But Robin was at peace after all that suffering, after all that loneliness. He was at peace. He was an architect in his professional life and used to take great delight in telling us that he designed prisons to keep people locked up. And when he retired, he was able to spend more time as our parish deacon. He was also a wonderfully devoted husband to his wife, Ailish, who had a series of very challenging illnesses. And he adored her and respected her and looked after her to her dying day. But he brought to our community something very special. First of all, as a married minister, understood family life and the day-to-day situation with regard to being married, which a celibate priest couldn't understand. He was also very humble and self-effacing. He never pushed himself, ever, as some deacons tend to do. Always was there quietly. He ran the baptism preparation program with Marina. He helped with the preparation of children for First Communion. He celebrated many funerals and looked after grieving families. He looked after people with Holy Communion and took them on as a little project to support them, especially if there were people who were living on their own. When he preached to us, it was always wise and humble and enlightening. And as I say, I think his greatest quality was his humility. Never pushing himself. And so the last words I said to him yesterday were, "You have been a wonderful servant of our Lord." And I said, "Be sure and remember that you have been a wonderful servant of our Lord." And so our sadness continues. Many of you who are watching this will be deeply upset by what I have said to you, and rightly so. Robin was just a bit older than me. I was hoping that he could be restored to health and to our full service so that together with the pastoral teams we could move the parishes on and try to create a family that looked after each other, which was, of course, Father Terry's great vision. It's also mine and Father Brian's too. And I know that Robin would have been very key to that. I spent an hour with the bishop yesterday afternoon on various matters, and he was telling me that, there simply are no priests anywhere, and it troubles him. And I want you to say a prayer for Bishop Patrick today, as well as for Robin, of course. But the responsibility is huge. And I said to him, whatever you ask of us, we will do. As long as you don't shut the churches, of course. I said, whatever you ask of us, we will do. It's our duty and our privilege to support you and to try to steer away out of not simply the pandemic, but the situation in which we find ourselves, so that we can be the people that the Lord wants us to be, which is what we've been talking about the last few weeks. I think that, as I said to you, people have become very selfish latterly, even vicious. When I said to Bishop Patrick, I said, I can't imagine for 1 minute what your mailbox must look like. And he just gave a quiet smile. People like him are the butt of others' anger. People who don't have the courtesy to speak to the person that they feel aggrieved about and then have to go to a bishop. We've lost something. We've lost our trust in each other, and we've become so taken up with our own welfare and our own needs that we just don't care about anybody. That's what's happened to us as a society. And that's what's so noticeable about the life of someone like Robin Pollard, because he just wasn't one bit like that. Not one. And in being sad at his passing, which is absolutely right for me, for all of us, and the same applied when we lost Father Terry, it's not enough to be sad. It's not enough to say, oh, well, we'll never see the like of them again. It's not enough. You have to be what those people were. Not just me, but all of us. We have to learn that word again that has disappeared from our language and our thinking, and the word is service. It's actually what the Greek word diakonia means, service. We lost it. And unless we find it again, there is no future for us as a church or a society. It is as simple as that. What we've seen in our brother Robin and Father Terry are two gifts to us, two very special examples for us here in this part of the diocese to know what that service is, what it means. We cannot say we don't know because we've seen it. And we can't say it's not my job because it is. And weeping and wailing over Father Terry or over Robin is not enough. We have to learn from their lives, from their living and from their dying, that this is how we proceed. There's no messing about. So when Mr. Johnson says things happen again, well, don't be impatient. Don't be impatient. Don't say, oh, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. No, we don't. Think about what we need to do for each other. Be confident in coming to Mass here with your community and in our other churches. Because when we come to Mass and we're together, the Lord can do what he needs to do, and he can show us how to serve him. He can show us how to serve him. Just as Robin has and Father Terry has. That's what we need to take away from this. We grieve and grieve sorely. But as we grieve, remember those words, which you will hear many times in the next few weeks. Because for all the things that Reverend Robin did and was, those words sum up his whole life and the end of his life. I am quite happy at the prospect of dying. For many years, I have wanted to see the Lord face to face. Rest in peace, dear brother.